Warning. The following video contains strong language that some viewers may find offensive or disturbing.
What terrifying confession has someone told you while drunk? A coworker told me she went all angel of mercy and smothered her elderly, dementia-ridden grandmother while she was sleeping. The next Monday in the office was definitely a weird one after that particular happy hour confession. My granny always tells us to push her out onto an ice floe when she can't think for herself anymore. Which is slightly disturbing but fine. Until she semi-ironically talks about going into her friend's dementia home and machine gunning all the old people. I worked in a hospital and an alcoholic guy the first knew from around my town came in. Of course he was very drunk, so he got a bed. He was homeless at this point. Just as he was starting to settle, he screamed, "I slit his fucking throat." So I went up to him and asked him to settle, and he started telling me that he did it while in the army and could never forgive himself for it. Cried himself to sleep and died in the local park a few months later. It was me who did the confessing. When I was 18, I was sexually assaulted on a bridge in the middle of the night when I was all alone. My mom works in hearing, and she had always told me to bite someone if I got into trouble. So I did. I bit into his neck until my teeth met again. He fell down, then I ran all the way home. A few weeks later I read in the news that a serial assaulter had gone to the hospital with neck wounds and later died. They'd drawn it down to him attacking someone and them acting in self-defense. I never told anyone until I got really drunk with my boyfriend last year and spilled it. He couldn't believe I'd kept that secret. Once at a college party, this big guy got upset, picked up the table and threw it across the room, shouting, "My uncle molested me." Everyone was terrified, but we all felt really bad for the guy. I have a friend whose grandmother married her late husband's friend. One day while drunk he confessed to killing her first husband. She packed up the kids and left. Had a buddy tell me his friend drunkenly confessed to him that he had killed his stepdad and made it look like a suicide. His stepdad had been abusive towards him and his mom for years, and it finally broke when he made it look like his stepfather had hung himself in their garage. I don't know who the friend was. I was never given a name or much else of the story. Haha, I put Adderall in your beer. We're gonna party till the sun comes up, bro. Single quote. Went on a work do and my co-worker, a major stone-faced bland woman, got pretty drunk. Ended up telling me she discovered her dad's body when he hung himself. Needless to say, I realized why she was the way she was after that. I am that woman now, sad face. I used to be a super cute young vibrant lady. But now I am 32 and fat and dumpy. I don't take care of myself much. I held my dad as he died and then screamed and cried for what felt like hours. I feel like I am still screaming and haven't woken up yet. I want to die. I had a male friend tell me he had raped me once when I was passed out drunk. I'm a straight male and had been friends with this guy for 15 years and had been drunk with him a lot. Since then I have found out a lot of messed up stuff about him. I'm so sorry that that happened to you. Growing up gay in a small town, I was the only gay person I knew for most of my life up until adulthood. I get sick with guilt when I read stories like yours because of how inappropriate and pushy I was with a straight friend when I was a teenager. But I never would have assaulted him like that or touched him, period, without his consent. It's just that he was kind of all I had. It's hard to accept no gracefully when you're young and lonely. Maybe I'm just rationalizing what a dick I was. I'm sorry. I feel like I'm making what happened to you about me somehow. I hope you're okay. Life is just so goddamn fucked up sometimes. My sister's boyfriend at the time told me he thought he might have fallen for the wrong sister. Doesn't compare to most of these. But my sister is my best friend. And I was so scared he might ruin that. Edit, since a lot of people have asked. No, I never told my sister about it. Another edit, they broke up very shortly after this. Because he was untrustworthy in other ways, he stole some money. She kicked him to the curb. Feel for you. I had a similar situation but with my cousin. We were super close with each other. Very much like sisters. Her boyfriend was around a lot and it always gotten along with him too. We had a really nice group dynamic. Then he tells me out of the blue that he wants to be with me instead and was only still dating my cousin so he could see me. Was such an awful moment. I brushed him off and didn't tell her about it. They broke up later because he was cheating with another girl. I am glad they did because a terrible guy, and I honestly would have had no idea how to go about telling her. A friend of mine died from a drug overdose. After the funeral, a mutual friend of ours and I were getting drunk when he broke down crying. He asked me if I remembered the time when he and our dead friend told me about an accident that they'd witnessed where they saw a truck driver die. I told him I did. He then told me the most fucked up shit. He said that our friend ran up to the dying man and stole his wedding ring. And that the man couldn't do anything but look up, terrified, at our friend as he was being robbed. I knew they were bad into drugs, but I never thought they could do anything like that. I grew up with them. They were like my brothers. I don't really trust anyone completely anymore. No drugs or alcohol involved. But I have somewhat of a similar story. A few years ago, my mom witnessed an accident. A lady was texting, blew through a red light, and T-boned a truck with an elderly man driving. My mom jumped out of her car and held onto him while waiting for an ambulance. The girl who hit him, early 20s, was freaking out and called her mom. The mom showed up first and kept telling my mom, "Just tell the cops he ran the red light. No one will know, and he died." My mom heard his last words, "Sounds really," that she repeated for weeks. My mom cried for days. She met the family, and it was the man and his wife's anniversary. Or something like that. We obviously told the cops the truth. But we don't know any of the follow-up. His obituary is framed on our wall. I hate to think the last thing he heard was, "Just tell the cops this was his fault." Single quote. My mom was in another state for business. A company flew her crew out to Texas to discuss a change in software and offered their company, and so it was just my dad taking care of me. I was about 10 and he came to tuck me in one night. But he has incredibly hammered. He opened the door to my bedroom, told me I was a mistake that saved them from getting divorced, and good night. Worst part is he didn't close the door completely when he left. I heard my mom tell her friend I was a mistake and the reason her and my dad divorced. That's why you don't eavesdrop. After my mom died, I was going through her email. We never had a good relationship. Pretty much ever. Anyways, I went in her Gmail and just did a search for my name. Found a part where she told my aunt how much she didn't like me and wishes I would just go away. It wasn't the least bit surprising. And I've said the same thing about her. But it still stung a bit. The thing we always fought about was her drinking. She was a chronic abusive alcoholic. My ex told me that he had been molested by his sister between the ages of 6 to 11. She was 9 to 14. His dad walked in once and didn't do anything. His own family knew that he was being sexually abused for years and did absolutely nothing to protect him. When I was 14, my mom took me and my sisters and a couple of our friends to the beach. My sister, 15, and I got our own room with our two friends and wound up meeting some boys and getting drunk. My sister's friend, 15F, was really drunk and got super upset and confessed that her stepfather had been sexually molesting her, raping her, for years. Really horrible stuff. It sobered everyone up fast. We rallied around her, told her we were there for her. Yada yada. But when we got home from the beach trip a few days later, I knew I needed to tell my mom. After I told my mom, she got the state police involved. There was a trial, and the man wound up sentenced to 8 years in prison. It turned out he was doing it to the younger sister as well. There are so many terrible people out there. I'm really glad that at such a young age all of you handled it so well and helped her out. I'm sure she really appreciated it. After a work party, the wife of a colleague and me ended up being the last two people standing. We were both fairly drunk when she started telling me about how she was raped by a priest when she was a kid. The church covered it all up and the bastard never faced any charges. A coworker was pretty inebriated when he told me that he hates his life. He hates his partner, and the only reason he's still married to her is because he loves his daughter and doesn't want to lose her. One of my best friends since middle school opened up to me the day we had our last day of high school. We had been partying all day, got off at 10 a.m., but most people left at around 3 p.m. to go get ready for the seniors' dinner and after party and whatnot. My friend stayed behind with our class president. I told him I'd pick him up for the dinner and left. When I got back, both were falling down drunk and in tears. A few years earlier, our class prez had lost his father. I take my buddy back to his house so he can get changed for the dinner, and on the way he tells me what happened. They had kept drinking when everyone left and eventually got to the topic of their dads. I had never met my friend's dad. He died and that was all I knew. I never knew how he died. It turns out my buddy's dad was a lawyer or something in the country he's from and was being extorted by a gang. When money started to run out, my buddy's dad sent the family to another country and told them he'd meet them there. That he had to finish some things up. A few weeks after moving they learned that he had been murdered by the gang. It completely fucked my friend up. We always used to drink heavily and whatever since we were in high school. For me it was just drinking. For my buddy it was numbing the pain. It was fucking shocking when he told me this. And really made me understand him a lot more. Why he acted how he acted. I have two. I had a housemate in college, who several years prior, had accidentally shot and killed a friend of his in a hunting accident. He went to trial, and was acquitted of all charges. Years later, he didn't tell me, but he told a woman I was intimate with, that it wasn't an accident. Years ago, when I worked at the Las Vegas Hilton, in the main kitchen, I had a very high-strung boss named Hussein. He was from Turkey. We jokingly referred to him as insane, because of his personality. Once, after our shift was over, he grabbed a case of beer from the supply walk-in refrigerator, and invited a few of us to help ourselves. He probably had 4 or 5 himself. He then proceeded to tell us that when he lived in Turkey, he had kicked some guy's ass and came to the US to get away. My coworkers and I really didn't give it too much thought. About a month later, we came to find out that while on vacation in Mexico, Hussein had been walking back to his hotel room after drinking at a bar. He had ducked down an alley to take a piss, and was caught by a policeman. He was charged and convicted of public urination. At least at the time. The US didn't have reciprocity with Turkey, but Mexico did. Well, it turns out that what Hussein had described as kicking someone's ass turned out to be murder. He was taken back to Turkey, where we assume that he spent the rest of his life in a Turkish prison. The movie The Midnight Express portrays what life is like there. My friend's husband told me he was hiding liquor from his wife, my friend. Which was weird, because they both drink and it's not a big deal. I told my friend what he said. She confronted him and all of his lies started pouring out. Cheating on her with multiple women. Lying about his income, taking CCs out in her name, racking up tens of thousands of dollars on them, stealing from their kids' college funds. They are now divorced. That weird little lie he told me while drunk is what started it all. My old pastor told me he was gay and found women repulsive. He had a wife and a baby on the way. This was in a small, very religious town where fear about the homosexuals were rampant. Shared an off-campus apartment with a very cool older guy in college. He was a nurse. Got up super early every morning to do his shifts. Every night you could find him at his regular Irish pub. They let me drink there without ID because they knew I was with him. Basically a super high-functioning alcoholic. One day I came home after finishing my exams. He brings out a bottle of Jameson to celebrate. It was about 2/3 full. After a few shots he starts telling me about his time in Vietnam. I'd known him for 2 years and he had never brought it up. And I had never asked. I knew he was a vet, but assumed he had been a nurse. Nope. Special Forces. I'm not military and I'm sure I got some of the actual military stuff wrong. As you shall come to understand. His demeanor totally changed after a few drinks. He started telling me about having to go on covert operations to carry out assassinations of civilians. Said he dreams of the faces of all the people he killed. We ended up polishing off the entire bottle. He got up the next morning at 5 a.m. and went off to work. I spent the entire day moaning in bed and praying to the porcelain god. We never spoke about it again. For watching. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, and hit the notification button. See you next time.